Hi, welcome back to Cubs in Culture, discussing Hell and High Water. This will be part two about the script, and then I'll have one final part about the other aspects of the film. Okay, so, apart from how it works as a genre piece, the movie is also, very well written in terms of like progression of characters and character motivation. So, for example, every single character sort of has a drive or a goal, which isn't often done. You get contradictions, etc., etc., etc. So, of course, in a movie like this, because it's two outlaws being followed by two sheriffs, character parallels run. You get character parallels. So I already said that Marcus is sort of the Bridges character, sort of the embodiment of the prototypical Western sheriff and how his toxic masculinity hurts him, etc. Well, it's also true that Tanner, who over the course of the movie, Marcus kills in retaliation for killing Alberto, which, by the way, I think this is why, even though it's not shown, that at the end of when the duel happens between Tanner and Marcus, Tanner will win, just because if you follow the way in which the logic works. So Tanner is sort of much more prototypically a Western outlaw figure. He has a bad relationship with his father. He actually killed his father. He's been to prison, etc., etc., etc. Toby is much more modern in a sense. He's an engineer, which wasn't a thing. He sort of isn't really interested in the outlaw lifestyle. He's a family man in essence. Tanner and Marcus run in parallel as sort of the much more classical characters, whereas Toby and Alberto are the characters that are commenting on the genre or the anti one. So that's all interesting and clever and everything like that. So there's that. Hold on one sec. Now, that sort of thing doesn't really occur to you while you're watching the film because you're simply involved in the story, because the screenplay, like no, I said that story way at the beginning of this is about patterns, breaking patterns, following a pattern and then fulfilling them in an unexpected way. Well, this movie does this all the freaking time. So it begins with them, with the two brothers robbing a bank, early in the morning, where you're sort of expecting them to, just because it's the first one, have just an instant success just to set up the story, but it's not. So it ends up being a success, but it's not an instant success because they have to wait for the bank manager. Or you're sort of waiting for problems to arise or get caught, and it's not cops who catch them first, it's fellow citizens. So the initial sort of first shootout isn't between cops and robbers, it's between cops and bystanders. Robbers and bystanders. Okay? Or you're sort of expecting Albert to because Marcus is so much about Albert and Marcus's character story is about how much Albert wants to stand up to him, and so you're kind of expecting Albert to stand up to him one day to put for the racist sheriff to be put into his place, but that happens, but in a way that you don't expect, because Albert dies, and his death is so affecting for Marcus that he ends up almost kind of half crying after, or not even half, like 30-second crying for half a second, but it's just enough where you feel that Marcus, that standing up to him, that Marcus kind of ended up doing that through his death, okay, and stuff like that. So all of this stuff is effortlessly involving, and the movie, again, when you're just watching it, it's just a hell of a good time, because it's, the dialogue is funny, it's crisp. I'll bring you peace, etc., etc., etc. It's just really crisp, economic writing. Okay, so but the one thing I do want to talk and about the other sort of thing that makes this such an interesting screenplay is the way in which every single character, person who speaks, is given or hinted or barely, like everyone feels 360 fleshed out in a way. So again, this is somewhat effortlessly. So for example, in the beginning, the bank manager who they're robbing, he very calmly says, "Good morning." And you get this sort of sense that he's a very quiet, dignified man who's sort of resigned to his fate, but he's going to, that he's, that's the good person. Or, because again, we're talking about character parallels, is at the beginning of the movie, there is this scene where the brothers are eating in a diner and they end up leaving a tip for this waitress, and the tip tries to get confiscated, and she ends up being combative with the Texas Rangers. So you get, and because she needs the money for mortgage or rent, and so you get, so you totally get the sense of like she's a single mother and she's really struggling, and this $200 that they left for her tip is really sort of important, and so she feels really alive and real. Okay, so at the beginning of the movie, you see with the brothers a commercial transaction in a diner where they pay her extra. Towards the end of the movie, to run both the parallel and sort of the unexpected, you have the two Texas Rangers in a diner at the beginning of a transaction. So you already have those two scenes run together, and sort of ironically, because they're backwards at like the end of the commercial transactions at the beginning of the film, the beginning of the commercial transactions at the end of the film, two sets of characters, Law and Order, all that sort of nice thing. But in terms of just unexpected ways in which propel a story about what's going on, or on it, like fulfilling expectations in a weird way. In a weird way, of course, is, think about this. In life, when you are in a restaurant and a waitress comes over to you, the thing out of her mouth is some form of, what do you want? What do you want? What are you ordering? Well, this waitress with the two Texas Rangers, what she says, "What don't you want?" And it immediately creates the thing of it. What the hell do you mean? It turns out this is a restaurant that serves only two meals: T-bone steak with potato or corn, or T-bone steak with a potato or green beans with iced tea. Okay, so the only option you get is, do you not want the green beans or do you not want the corn? Okay, so in a way, it's what don't you want? It's in the course of the movie, in the course of the scene, it's funny, and it's like, what the hell's going on? It's at the end of it, though, when you realize, in a lot of ways, what people are choosing through this movie is not what they want, but what they don't want. Chris Pine doesn't, Toby doesn't want his kids in poverty. Jeff Bridges, Marcus' character, major character choice is he doesn't want to retire. Alberto doesn't want to be picked on. Tanner doesn't want to be a civilian. Tanner doesn't want a normal life. He wants sort of the high adventure. Okay, so this scene of what don't you want? It's great because as it happens in the movie, it's entertaining and it's unexpected, but it fulfills the convention of getting the order, and then it works thematically in that that's sort of what the question is being posed to every single character. It functions as sort of also classical form because this is sort of the rattlesnake, gruff, plain sort of woman who a waitress who suffers no fools, et cetera, et cetera. So it also brings up sort of the notion of because the waitress who says, "What don't you want?" is old and she's been doing it forever. So like the classical form, like this genre is just tired, like it's tired, etc. There's so much, and of course because it parallels the beginning of the scene, it's a way in which of seeing how, again, it sort of gets the sense of the old ways having to die because they're too gruff, etc., etc., etc. So you can talk about that scene forever, and so. at the end of the day, Hell or High Water, the real star of the movie is the script. It works as a brilliant piece of Western. It works as just a good story because of the way in which it effortlessly fits, plays around with our expectations. But it also functions as a great Western. It also functions as a great commentary on the Western, etc. It functions as a commentary on the financial crisis, etc., etc. Hell or High Water is amazing. And then one last thing about what don't you want, of course, is the phrase normally is come hell or high water. And when you first read the film, you're thinking it's about they need to get this done. And it's partially that, but it's not come hell or high water. It's hell or high water. It's asking you to make a choice. What don't you want? Okay, so let me pause there and I'll be back for the rest of Cubs and Culture for today in a sec.